Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a powerful love story. And tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Daniel Ashford's penthouse office like bullets against bulletproof glass. At 38, he commanded a tech empire worth billions. Yet the hollow ache in his chest made him feel like the poorest man alive. 2 years had passed since Rebecca's death, and the guilt still gnawed at him like acid. He should have picked her up that night. Should have insisted she stay home instead of driving to her sister's in the storm. The drunk driver who ran the red light had stolen more than his wife he had stolen. Daniel's ability to feel anything but rage and emptiness. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Ashford, there's an urgent situation at the community center." Daniel's jaw tightened. The charity funding he had approved months ago, another tax write-off. Another way to silence the board's complaints about his hermit image. What kind of situation? The art teacher, Emma Clark. She's been in an accident. Something cold twisted in Daniel's stomach. He had never met Emma Clark, had only signed the checks. But the way his assistant's voice trembled made his hands shake. 20 minutes later, Daniel stood in the sterile hospital corridor, rain still dripping from his expensive coat. Through the small window of room 314, he saw her for the first time. Emma Clark lay unconscious, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like spilled wine. Even bruised and bandaged, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest constrict painfully. "Are you family?" A nurse approached with a clipboard. Daniel hesitated. What was he? A stranger who funded her program? A man inexplicably drawn to a woman he'd never met. "I'm her employer." The nurse's expression softened. "She has no one else. Her mother passed last month, and there's no other family listed. The children from her art program have been calling all day, asking about Miss Emma." Daniel found himself stepping closer to the window. Emma's face was peaceful, despite the cuts and bruises. Her hands, even in sleep, were stained with painty flecks of blue and yellow under her fingernails. Real, honest, everything his world wasn't. Will she recover? The doctors are optimistic about her physical injuries, but she suffered a severe concussion. There might be complications. As if summoned by their conversation, Emma's eyes fluttered open. Brown eyes, the color of autumn leaves. For a moment, they were unfocused, confused. Then they locked onto Daniel's face through the glass, and something electric passed between them. Recognition without introduction. Connection without explanation. Emma tried to sit up, wincing in pain. The nurse rushed in, and Daniel followed without permission. "Easy, honey. You've been unconscious for 6 hours." Emma's gaze never left Daniel's face. "Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse but melodic, like honey over broken glass. "Daniel Ashford." The words felt strange in his mouth. For 2 years, his name had meant nothing but business and obligation. Now, saying it to her, it felt like he was introducing himself for the first time. The Daniel Ashford? Emma struggled to focus. "Why are you here?" Before Daniel could answer, Emma's expression changed. Her eyes widened with a memory that clearly terrified her. The children. Oh God, the children. "I was driving to pick up supplies for tomorrow's class when the truck ran the red light. Did I hurt anyone? Please tell me I didn't hurt anyone." The raw anguish in her voice hit Daniel like a physical blow. This woman, lying broken in a hospital bed, was worried about others. When Rebecca died, Daniel had thought only of his own pain. But Emma's first concern was for the children she taught. "No one else was hurt," Daniel said quietly. But the community center, there was damage. The art room was flooded when a pipe burst during the storm. Emma's face crumpled. The children's artwork. Months of work. Their portfolio pieces for the scholarship applications. Tears slid down her cheeks. Those kids have so little, and I promised them their art would open doors. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. Not break, he was already broken, but crack open like ice beginning to thaw. I can fix this. You can't fix everything with money, Mr. Ashford. Her words stung because they were true. He couldn't buy Rebecca back. Couldn't purchase forgiveness for the guilt that ate him alive. But maybe, just maybe, he could do something that mattered. Let me try. Emma studied his face with those perceptive brown eyes. What she saw there made her expression soften. Why would you want to help? You don't even know me. Daniel moved closer to her bedside, drawn by something he couldn't name. Because 2 years ago, I lost someone I loved in an accident just like yours. And I've been angry at the world ever since. But you're lying here broken, and all you can think about is protecting those children. I want to understand how you do that. Do what? Still care about something other than your own pain. Emma's breath caught. In his storm-gray eyes, she saw a grief that mirrored her own, not from loss of life, but from loss of purpose, of hope, of the ability to connect with another human being. Mr. Ashford. Daniel. Please. Daniel. His name on her lips sounded different than when others said it. Softer. More real. I care because those children saved me as much as I tried to save them. When my mother was dying and I had nothing left, teaching them reminded me that beauty still exists in the world. And now, Emma's eyes closed, exhaustion pulling at her. Now, I don't know what I believe anymore. Daniel found himself reaching for her paint-stained hand before he could stop himself. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through him. Emma's eyes snapped open, and he saw that she felt it too, that inexplicable connection that defied logic. I'll rebuild your art room, he said, his voice rougher than intended. But I want something in return. Emma's expression grew wary. What? I want you to teach me. Teach you what? How to feel something other than rage. Emma stared at him, seeing past the expensive suit and cold reputation to the broken man underneath. That's a dangerous thing to ask for, Daniel Ashford. Why? Because feeling something means risking everything. And I'm not sure either of us is strong enough for what that might cost. Thunder crashed outside the hospital window, and in that moment, both of them knew their lives had just changed forever. But neither could have predicted the devastating price they would both pay for daring to hope again. 3 weeks later, Daniel stood in the doorway of the rebuilt art room, watching Emma arrange supplies with meticulous care. The insurance payout and his additional funding had transformed the space into something magical: high-end easels, professional-grade paints, and lighting that made every color come alive. But it was Emma who made the room breathe. She moved differently now, more carefully since the accident. Her left arm still bore the fading yellow-green of healing bruises. Sometimes she'd pause, touching her temple where the concussion had left its mark. But when she worked, when she prepared for her students, she glowed with purpose. You're early, she said without turning around. Somehow, she always knew when he arrived. The children don't start for another hour. I thought we could begin. Emma finally faced him, and Daniel felt that familiar jolt of connection. 3 weeks of daily visits had only intensified whatever was building between them. She wore a simple sundress, yellow like sunshine, with paint already smudged on her fingers from morning preparations. Are you sure about this? Learning to paint won't bring her back. The mention of Rebecca should have triggered his usual wall of defensive anger. Instead, Daniel found himself stepping closer. I'm not trying to bring her back anymore. I'm trying to learn how to live without her. Emma's expression softened. That's the first step. She handed him a brush, their fingers touching in the exchange. The spark was always there now, acknowledged but unspoken. What do you want to paint? I don't know. Everything I've created in the past 2 years has been about business, profit, acquisition. I don't remember the last time I made something just because I wanted to. Emma moved behind him, her hand covering his on the brush. Close your eyes. What do you feel right now? Daniel's breath caught. Her warmth pressed against his back, her voice soft near his ear. Confused. Good. Confusion means you're letting go of control. What else? Scared? The admission surprised him. Of what? Daniel's eyes opened, meeting hers in the mirror across the room. Of wanting something I can't buy? Of caring about someone I might lose? Emma's hand tightened on his. Paint that fear. What emerged on the canvas over the next hour was nothing like Daniel expected. Dark grays and blues swirled with sudden bursts of gold and red. It looked like a storm, but there was light breaking through hope, fighting against despair. It's beautiful, Emma whispered. It's chaos. Sometimes chaos is the most honest thing we can create. The sound of children's laughter interrupted them. Emma immediately shifted into teacher mode, her face lighting up as her students filed in. Daniel watched her interact with each child, remembering their names, their current projects, their small victories and struggles. She saw them, really saw them in a way that made his chest ache. Mr. Daniel. 7-year-old Marcus ran up to him, paint already on his shirt. Are you going to paint with us today? Daniel looked to Emma, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like that. The next 2 hours passed like minutes. Daniel found himself absorbed in helping the children, seeing the world through their eyes unfiltered, hopeful, full of possibility. When Marcus struggled with mixing colors, Daniel showed him how to blend blue and yellow to create the perfect shade of green. When shy Sarah couldn't decide what to paint, Daniel suggested she paint her feelings, just as Emma had taught him. You're good with them, Emma said as they cleaned up afterward. They're not complicated. They just want to be heard, to be seen, like everyone else. Daniel paused in washing brushes. Is that what you see when you look at me? Someone who wants to be seen? Emma turned to face him fully. I see someone who's been invisible for so long he's forgotten he exists. But you're here now, Daniel. With paint on your shirt and patience for a 7-year-old's questions, you're becoming real again. The truth in her words hit him like a physical blow. Emma, I know. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. I feel it too. Whatever this is, Daniel's hand rose to cup her face, his thumb tracing the faded bruise on her cheek. I swore I'd never risk loving someone again, and I swore I'd never trust someone with enough money to destroy everything I care about. So where does that leave us? Emma leaned into his touch, terrified and falling anyway. Daniel's head bent toward hers, and Emma's eyes fluttered closed. The kiss that was about to happen hung in the air between them, inevitable and frightening. Then Emma's phone rang. She jerked away, breaking the spell. The caller ID made her face go pale. It's the hospital. Daniel watched Emma's expression change as she listened. Color drained from her cheeks, and her free hand gripped the edge of the table. What do you mean there's been a mistake? Emma's voice rose. The insurance covered everything. You said the bills were paid? Daniel moved closer, concern replacing the charged moment they'd just shared. How much? Emma whispered into the phone. Then louder. 50,000? But that's impossible. I don't have $50,000, Daniel reached for the phone. Let me ply. This isn't your problem, Emma. Please. I can write a check right now, and then what? I owe you instead of the hospital. I become another charity case for the guilty billionaire. Her words stung because they struck too close to home. That's not what this is, isn't it? Emma's eyes blazed. You show up in my life when I'm broken, fix everything with money, play with my emotions, and now you want to save me again? I've heard this story before, Daniel. Rich man, poor woman. It never ends well for the woman. This is different. We're different. Are we? Or am I just the project that makes you feel better about yourself? Daniel felt his own anger rising. You think I'm using you? I think you're using the idea of me, the noble teacher who reminds you how to feel. But feelings aren't charity, Daniel. You can't just write a check and fix what's broken inside. You can't let pride destroy your life rather than accept help from someone who cares about you. Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. Cares about me? You've known me for 3 weeks. What you care about is the fantasy of redemption I represent. Daniel stepped back as if she'd slapped him. That's what you really think? Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking fragile again. I think you're a good man trying to heal from something terrible. But I won't be the bandage you use to cover your wounds. I deserve more than that. What if you're wrong? What if this is real? Emma met his eyes, and for a moment, Daniel saw past her defenses to the fear beneath. She was as terrified as he was, as desperate to believe this connection meant something. Then prove it, she said quietly. Walk away. Give me space to figure out my own problems. If what we have is real, it'll survive that. If it's just grief and loneliness dressed up as love, then we'll both be better off knowing now. Daniel stared at her, his heart hammering against his ribs. Walking away from Emma felt like dying all over again. But the challenge in her eyes, the pain she was trying so hard to hide, made him realize she was right. They were both too broken to know if what they felt was healing or just a beautiful kind of destruction. How long? He asked. I don't know. Until I can pay my own bills. Until I can look at you and know I'm choosing you, not your ability to fix my problems. Daniel nodded once, sharply. Then he pulled out his checkbook. Don't, Emma warned. I'm not paying your hospital bills, Daniel wrote quickly, then tore off the check and handed it to her. I'm buying a painting. Emma looked down at the check. It was made out for exactly $50,000. In the memo line, he'd written, Purchase of Storm Breaking, original work by Emma Clark. Daniel, the painting you guided me through today. It's mine now. A fair price for an original work by a talented artist. His gray eyes were steady on hers. This isn't charity, Emma. This is business. And when you're ready to admit that what we have is more than just a broken man trying to buy his way back to feeling something, you know where to find me? He walked to the door, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, you're right. I am trying to heal from something terrible. But so are you. The question is whether we're brave enough to heal together, or if we're going to let pride destroy the first real thing.
Either of us
has felt in years. Emma watched him leave, the check trembling in her hands. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, promising another storm. But this time, she would weather it alone. The door closed behind Daniel with a finality that echoed through the empty art room. Emma sank into a chair, surrounded by the smell of paint and the ghosts of possibilities that might never be. 6 months passed like a slow hemorrhage. Daniel threw himself back into work with the desperate intensity of a drowning man, acquiring companies and making deals that meant nothing beyond the temporary silence they brought to his thoughts. But every morning he drove past the community center. Every evening he stared at the painting Emma had helped him create. Now hanging in his penthouse like a window into a life he'd walked away from. Emma had paid her hospital bills and rebuilt her life with fierce independence. The art program flourished, and 3 of her students had won scholarships to prestigious art schools. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt hollow, like a painting with all the color drained out. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. Miss Emma. Marcus's voice was small and scared on the phone. Can you come to the hospital? It's my mom. Emma found the 8-year-old in the pediatric waiting area, still wearing his school uniform. His mother, Rosa, was a single parent who worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. Emma had watched Marcus worry about her health for months, the way Rosa would pause to catch her breath, the increasing pallor in her cheeks. What happened, sweetheart? She collapsed at work. The doctors are saying things I don't understand. Marcus's dark eyes filled with tears. They're talking about surgery she can't afford, and medicines that cost more than our rent. Emma's heart clenched. She knew that desperation intimately, the helpless rage of watching someone you love suffer while money, always money, stood between them and hope. How much do they need? $200,000. For the surgery and the treatments after? Marcus's voice broke. We don't have that kind of money. Nobody we know has that kind of money, except one person. Emma closed her eyes. Pride warring with love for this child who had painted his way into her heart. Daniel's words echoed in her memory. When you're ready to admit that what we have is more than just a broken man trying to buy his way back to feeling something, you know where to find me. 3 hours later, Emma stood outside Ashford Technologies. Rain beginning to fall like tears from a gray sky. She hadn't been here since that first day in the hospital. But the sleek glass building looked exactly as cold and cozying as she'd imagined. The receptionist looked up with practiced politeness that flickered, to surprise when Emma gave her name. Mr. Ashford asked to be notified immediately if you ever came here. Emma's heart hammered as she waited in the elevator, watching floor numbers climb toward the penthouse office. What would she say? How do you swallow 6 months of pride and ask for help from the man you pushed away because you were too scared to trust your own feelings? The elevator doors opened to reveal Janet, Daniel's assistant, who smiled with genuine warmth. Miss Clark, he's in the conference room, but I'll get him. Actually, Emma said, could you give him a message instead? Tell him I need to buy a painting. Janet's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. Of course. Which painting? He'll know. Emma waited in Daniel's office, surrounded by the cold perfection of his success. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread below like a circuit board, all straight lines and calculated connections. But on his desk, incongruous among the stark modern furnishings, sat a small painted rock, the kind children make in art class. Marcus gave that to me about 4 months ago. Emma spun around. Daniel stood in the doorway, and the sight of him after 6 months of absence hit her like a physical blow. He looked tired, older somehow, but his storm-gray eyes were as intense as ever. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, but Emma could see past the armor now to the man underneath. You've been visiting the center. Not visiting. Just driving by. Daniel stepped into the room, careful to maintain distance between them. Janet said you wanted to buy a painting. Emma's carefully rehearsed words crumbled. Daniel, why now, Emma? What's changed? The pain in his voice made her wince. Marcus's mother needs surgery. $200,000. Daniel's expression went carefully blank. And you thought of me? Of course. That's not. Emma stopped, took a breath. Yes, I thought of you. Because you're the only person I know who could write that check without it changing your life. But also because you care about those children. About Marcus. So this is about Marcus. No. Emma stepped closer, her heart hammering. This is about me swallowing my pride and admitting that I was wrong. About me being brave enough to ask for help, not just because I need it, but because I trust you. Because she stopped, the words catching in her throat. Because you what? Emma looked up at him, seeing past the careful control to the hope he was trying so hard to hide. Because I missed you. Because every sunset for 6 months has looked wrong without you there to see it. Because I painted a dozen canvases trying to capture the way you looked at me. I ruined every single one because no pigment on earth matches the color of your eyes when you smile. Daniel's breath caught. Emma, because I was terrified of needing you. And I spent 6 months learning that needing someone and letting them matter to you aren't the same thing. Because I love you, Daniel Ashford. And I'm tired of pretending that pride is more important than that. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel stood frozen, as if moving might shatter the moment. Then, in 2 quick strides, he closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands. Say it again? I love you. Even knowing what comes with loving me. The media attention, the board meetings, the charity galas where people will judge everything about you. Even knowing that I'm stubborn and independent and that I'll probably push you away again when I get scared. Daniel's thumb traced her cheek. I wrote the check 4 months ago. Emma blinked. What, Rose's surgery? The moment Marcus mentioned it to me, I arranged for the hospital bills to be covered by an anonymous foundation. Daniel's expression grew sheepish. I may have also ensured that Rosa gets excellent health insurance through her employer, and that Marcus has a college fund. Emma stared at him. You've been taking care of them this whole time? I've been taking care of all of them. The whole art program. Every child who's shown talent, every family facing hardship. Did you really think I'd walk away and let any of those kids suffer? But you stayed away from me because you asked me to. Because I wanted to prove that I could love you without trying to fix you. Daniel's voice grew rough. It nearly killed me, Emma. Loving you from a distance. Making sure you were safe, but never being able to touch you, to talk to you. To see your face light up when one of the children shows you their work. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You've been watching over all of us. I told you I was good at seeing people who needed to be seen. Emma laughed through her tears. Overwhelmed by the depth of his care, the way he'd protected her pride while still protecting the people she loved. "I don't deserve you. Neither of us deserves this," Daniel said, his forehead resting against hers. "We're both too broken, too scared, too damaged by loss. But maybe that's exactly why we fit." Emma rose on her toes, and this time when their lips met, there was no hesitation. The kiss was desperate and gentle and full of 6 months of longing. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Daniel whispered against her lips, "There's something else you need to know." Something in his tone made her step back. "What?" Daniel moved to his desk, pulling out a manila folder with shaking hands. "The night Rebecca died, the drunk driver who killed her, Emma's blood turned to ice. Daniel, his name was James Clark." The folder slipped from Daniel's hands. Photographs and police reports scattering across the floor. Emma stared at him. The word's not computing. "Clark is a common name," she whispered. "Emma." Daniel's voice was broken. "James Clark was your father." The world tilted on its axis. Emma grabbed the edge of the desk, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. "No, I found out 3 months ago. I hired a private investigator to look into your background, not to spy on you, but to understand why I felt so connected to you. Why meeting you felt like fate." Emma's mind raced through fragments of memory. Her father, who had left when she was 12. Her mother's careful silences when Emma asked about him. The alcohol that had driven him away from their family, and apparently, into someone else's tragedy. "You've known for 3 months?" "Yes, and you said nothing." "How could I? How do you tell the woman you love that her father killed your wife? How do you separate the daughter from the man who destroyed your life?" Emma's legs gave out. She sank into Daniel's chair, staring at the scattered police reports. In one photo, she could see her father's face older, rougher than she remembered, but unmistakably him. James Clark, 52. Blood alcohol levels 0.18. Ran red light on Maple Street at 11:47 p.m. She was coming home from her sister's, Daniel said quietly. "Rebecca. She was 3 months pregnant. We hadn't told anyone yet because she'd had miscarriages before and wanted to wait. But she was so happy, Emma. So excited about finally being a mother." Each word was a knife in Emma's heart. "Daniel, I hated him for 2 years, hated James Clark with every breath in my body. And then I met his daughter. And she was everything beautiful and good and pure that he wasn't. And I fell in love with the person whose existence felt like the cruelest joke the universe could play." Emma looked up at him, seeing the agony in his eyes. "Is that why you helped me? Why you funded the art program? Guilt?" "At first, maybe. I don't know. But everything else the way I feel about you. The way you make me want to be better than my pain that's real." Emma stood slowly, her world reshaping itself around this new, terrible knowledge. "My father killed your wife and unborn child. Yes, and he fell in love with me anyway. I fell in love with you because of who you are, not despite who your father was." Emma picked up one of the police reports, her hands trembling. Rebecca's photo smiled back at her young, beautiful, radiant, with the joy of carrying new life. The life that Emma's father had stolen in one moment of drunken selfishness. "I have to go." Emma moved toward the door. "Emma, please. Don't let him destroy this too." She turned back, tears streaming down her face. "How can I love you knowing what I know? How can you love me?" "Because love isn't fair or logical or clean," Daniel said desperately. "Because Rebecca is gone, and James is gone, and we can't undo any of it. But we're here. We're alive. And we found each other in all this wreckage. I need time to think." "How much time?" Emma looked at him one last time, memorizing his face. "I don't know. Maybe forever." She left him standing in his office, surrounded by the scattered evidence of their intertwined tragedies. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing away the last traces of the life Emma thought she'd been building at the elevator. She turned back to see Daniel watching her through his office windows. Even from this distance, she could see the devastation in his posture, the way he stood like a man who had lost everything twice, the elevator. Doors closed between them like a curtain falling on the final act. Emma closed her eyes and tried to imagine a world where love could survive this kind of revelation. She couldn't. Asterisk.
Us.
2 months after learning the truth, Emma stood in her apartment at 3 a.m., staring at a canvas that refused to cooperate. She had been painting obsessively since leaving Daniel's office, trying to work through emotions too complex for words. But every brushstroke felt like a lie. The painting showed two figures reaching for each other across a chasm filled with shadows. No matter how she tried, she couldn't make their fingers touch. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Miss Emma, Mr. Daniel came to class today." He looked sad. "Are you fighting?" Emma set down her brush, her heart clenching. She had avoided the community center for weeks, knowing Daniel had resumed his visits. The children loved him. He had become Uncle Daniel, the man who brought expensive supplies and stayed after class to help with difficult techniques. They didn't understand why their beloved teacher had suddenly stopped coming when he was there. Another text. "Mom wants to meet you tomorrow. She has something important to say." Emma closed her eyes. Rosa's surgery had been successful, but Emma hadn't been able to face the woman whose life had been saved by the man Emma couldn't bear to see. How do you explain that the person who saved your family is someone you love, but can't forgive yourself for loving? The next afternoon, Emma sat across from Rosa in the hospital cafeteria. The older woman looked healthier than she had in months, color back in her cheeks. But her dark eyes held a sadness that Emma recognized. "Marcus told me you haven't been coming to classes when Mr. Ashford is there." Emma stirred her coffee, not trusting her voice. "He also told me that Mr. Ashford asks about you every time, that he looks like a ghost when Marcus says you're fine but won't see him." "Rosa, it's complicated. Mia, I'm 43 years old. I raised a son alone while working 2 jobs and fighting a heart condition. I know complicated." Rosa reached across the table to touch Emma's hand. "But I also know love when I see it, and I know guilt." Emma's head snapped up. "What?" "The reason I got sick, Emma. The reason my heart started failing." Rosa's voice grew quiet. "For 3 years I've been taking extra shifts, working 16-hour days, barely sleeping. You know why?" Emma shook her head. "Because Marcus's father left us with $20,000 in debt when he disappeared. Gambling debts. Dangerous people who don't care that I didn't know about the money he owed." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "I've been paying them back, little by little, working myself to death to keep us safe." "Rosa, why didn't you tell me?" "Pride, shame, the same reasons you won't see the man who loves you." Rosa squeezed Emma's hand. "But here's the thing I learned lying in that hospital bed, thinking I might die and leave my son alone. The past doesn't get to choose our future. Marcus's father was a selfish coward who destroyed his family for money. But that doesn't make Marcus less worthy of love, of opportunities, of a good life." Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Your father's choices don't define you, Mia, and they don't get to destroy your chance at happiness. But Daniel's wife is gone, and nothing you do now will bring her back or make your father's actions any less terrible. But Daniel is here. You are here. And love this deep, this real, is rare enough that wasting it on guilt is the real tragedy." That evening, Emma found herself at the cemetery where Rebecca Ashford was buried. She had looked up the location, needing to see the place where Daniel brought his grief. The headstone was simple but elegant, surrounded by fresh flowers, white roses, and baby's breath. "I don't know if you can hear me," Emma said quietly, kneeling beside the grave. "I don't even know if I believe in anything beyond this life. But if you're somewhere, if consciousness survives death, I need you to know something." The wind rustled through the trees, and Emma took it as encouragement to continue. "I love him. I love Daniel with everything I am, and it's killing me that my father took you from him. I can't undo what James Clark did. I can't bring you back or give Daniel the life you two should have had together." Emma's voice broke. "But I can love him. I can try to help him heal, to find joy again, to remember that life can be beautiful even after tragedy." She placed her own white roses beside the others. "I'm not trying to replace you. I could never do that. But I'm asking for your blessing to love the man you loved, to help him find peace. to build something new from the wreckage my father left behind. A gentle breeze stirred the flowers, and Emma felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't sure she could ever forgive her father for what he'd stolen. But acceptance, perhaps. The understanding that she could choose love over guilt. Healing over destruction. Emma was walking back to her car when she saw him. Daniel stood beside a black sedan 50 yards away, his hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression of such raw longing that it took her breath away. "How long have you been here?" she called out. "Every Tuesday for 2 months. I come to talk to Rebecca, and you've been here the last 3 Tuesdays. Daniel walked closer, but stopped several feet away, respecting the distance she'd maintained. "I didn't want to intrude, but I couldn't leave without making sure you were okay." Emma's heart hammered. "What do you tell her?" "That I'm sorry I survived when she didn't. That I'm sorry I fell in love again when I swore I never would. That I hope she understands why I can't let go of you, even though letting go might be the right thing to do." And what do you think she says? Daniel's smile was sad and beautiful. "I think she tells me to stop being an idiot and fight for the woman I love." Emma laughed despite her tears. "She sounds wise." She was. She would have liked you, Emma. Your strength, your compassion, the way you see beauty in broken things. Daniel stepped closer. "She would have understood why I can't walk away from this, from us, even knowing where it comes from." "I've been painting again," Emma said suddenly, "trying to work through everything. I keep painting the same image to people reaching for each other across this impossible gap, and I can never make their hands touch. Maybe that's the point." Emma looked up at him, confused. Maybe love isn't about touching across the gap. Maybe it's about being brave enough to jump. Before Emma could respond, Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's my lawyer." Emma watched his face change as he listened, saw the color drain from his cheeks. "What do you mean? Charges are being filed." Daniel's voice rose. "Against whom?" Emma's blood turned to ice. She could hear the tinny voice on the other end, urgent and apologetic. "When?" Daniel demanded. "How long do we have?" When he hung up, his hands were shaking. "Daniel, what's wrong?" "There's been a development in Rebecca's case. New evidence." Daniel's gray eyes met hers, and Emma saw fear, their deep, primal terror. "Emma, they found something in your father's car. Something that suggests Rebecca's death wasn't just a drunk driving accident." Emma's world tilted. "What kind of something?" "A burner phone with text messages. Arrangements for payment." "Emma." Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "They think your father was hired to kill Rebecca." The cemetery spun around Emma. She grabbed Daniel's arm to steady herself. "That's impossible. He was just a drunk who made a terrible mistake. The messages suggest otherwise. Someone paid James Clark $50,000 to make Rebecca's death look like an accident." "Who?" Daniel's expression grew grim. "That's what we need to find out. Because if they killed Rebecca to hurt me, and they find out about us, about how much you mean to me..." He pulled Emma against his chest, his arms tight around her. "Emma, you could be in danger." As if summoned by his words, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled slowly past the cemetery entrance. It didn't stop, but Emma felt the weight of unseen eyes watching them. "We need to leave," Daniel said urgently. Now, as they hurried toward their cars, Emma's mind raced through the implications. If her father had been hired to kill Rebecca, then someone had orchestrated the tragedy that brought her and Daniel together. Someone who might not want them to find happiness in the wreckage of their shared loss. "Daniel," she called as they reached their vehicles. "If this is true, if someone orchestrated Rebecca's death and is now watching us, I won't let anyone hurt you," he said fiercely. "I've lost everyone I've ever loved to violence. I won't lose you too." Emma looked at him across the space between their cars, the man she loved. Surrounded by shadows and threats, she was only beginning to understand. What if loving me is what puts me in danger? Then we'll face that danger together. But I'm done losing people to other people's evil, Emma. I'm done letting fear make my choices for me. As they drove away from the cemetery in separate cars, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. In her rearview mirror, she thought she saw the same black SUV. Maintaining a careful distance, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging into the past, or the future will cost you everything." Emma's hands trembled as she forwarded the message to Daniel. Whatever had killed Rebecca was still out there, still dangerous. And now it knew about Emma. The cemetery disappeared behind them, taking with it any illusion of safety they might have had. The game they'd been playing was no longer about love conquering grief. It was about survival. Asterisk, the safe house was a modest cabin an hour outside the city, surrounded by pine trees and the kind of silence that made every sound feel amplified. Emma sat at the kitchen table, watching Daniel pace while FBI agent Sarah Martinez spread photographs and documents across the worn wood surface. "Victor Henley," Agent Martinez said, pointing to a photograph of a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Daniel's former business partner and Rebecca's ex-boyfriend from college. He was also the primary investor who tried to force a hostile takeover of Ashford Technologies 2 years ago. Emma studied the photo. Henley looked like every other wealthy businessman, polished, confident, unremarkable. "And you think he orchestrated Rebecca's murder?" "We think he paid your father to kill Rebecca as leverage against Daniel," Martinez replied. Rebecca's death sent Daniel into a spiral that nearly destroyed his company. Henley swooped in 6 months later with a buyout offer that would have given him controlling interest.
Daniel stopped pacing.
"But I didn't sell." "No, but you became a recluse. You stopped attending board meetings, stopped making strategic decisions. Your stock price plummeted." Martinez pulled out a financial chart. Henley was positioned to acquire Ashford Technologies for a fraction of its worth. Emma felt sick. "My father was a pawn, a desperate pawn with gambling debts and a drinking problem. Easy to manipulate." Martinez's voice was gentle but frank. "The messages show Henley offered to clear James's debts in exchange for what he called removing an obstacle. But why kill Rebecca instead of me directly?" "Because your death would have triggered a massive investigation. Rebecca's death looked like a tragic accident that destroyed you psychologically. It was cleaner, more devastating to your ability to function." Emma watched Daniel's hands clench into fists. 2 years of grief and guilt, and it had all been orchestrated by someone who saw human lives as chess pieces to be sacrificed. Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "That's the problem. He disappeared after we started investigating the phone records. We think he knows we're closing in." Martinez closed the file. "Which brings us to the current threat. Henley has everything to lose if this goes to trial. And Emma, you're the key witness who can connect your father to Henley through the financial records." "What financial records?" Martinez pulled out bank statements. "Your father deposited exactly $50,000 3 days before the accident. The money was traced to a shell company owned by Henley." Emma stared at the documents, seeing her father's name on forms that turned him from a tragic drunk into a paid killer. "So Henley wants me dead to protect himself." "We believe so. But Daniel's feelings for you have made the situation more complicated. Killing you now wouldn't just eliminate a witness, it would destroy Daniel all over again. Henley might see that as a bonus." Daniel moved to Emma's side, his hand settling on her shoulder. "What do you need us to do?" "We need Emma to testify before the grand jury. With her testimony and the evidence we've gathered, we can indict Henley for conspiracy to commit murder. And until then, you both stay here, stay safe, and stay alive." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She found Daniel on the cabin's small porch, staring out at the star-filled sky. The city lights were far away here, leaving the darkness pure and complete. "I keep thinking about choices," Emma said, settling beside him on the wooden steps. "My father chose money over conscience. Henley chose revenge over humanity. Rebecca chose to drive to her sister's that night instead of staying home. We chose to love each other despite everything that should have kept us apart." Emma leaned against his shoulder. "Do you think she knew, Rebecca? When she saw my father's car running that red light, do you think she had time to be afraid?" Daniel's arm tightened around her. "I used to torture myself with that question. But Agent Martinez was right. The autopsy showed she died on impact. No time for fear, no time for pain. It's time for her last heartbeat. It's just time for her last heartbeat. They sat in comfortable silence, processing the weight of everything they'd learned. Finally, Emma spoke. Daniel, if something happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you. But if it does, if Henley finds us, if this goes wrong, I'm going to turn to face him. I need you to know that falling in love with you wasn't a mistake. Even knowing everything we know now, even understanding the price, I would choose you again. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. Emma, I mean it. My father's choices don't get to define our story. Henley's evil doesn't get to corrupt what we found in each other. What we have is real, and it's good, and it exists separate from all the darkness. Daniel kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of promises neither of them could guarantee they'd be alive to keep. When they broke apart, Emma saw tears on his cheeks. I love you, he whispered. I love you more than I thought possible. More than I loved Rebecca, which terrifies me and amazes me and makes me believe that hearts can expand instead of just breaking and healing. I love you too, completely, without reservation. They held each other under the stars. Two people who had found light in the deepest darkness, refusing to let that light be extinguished by forces beyond their control. The attack came at dawn. Emma woke to the sound of breaking, Lassen Agent Martinez shouting orders. Daniel was already moving, pulling Emma from the bed toward the back of the cabin. Go, he urged, pushing her toward the window. There's a path through the trees. Follow it to the main road and don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Emma, please. The front door exploded inward. Men in tactical gear poured through, but their movements were wrong, too precise, too coordinated. Not FBI, not police. Henley's men, Daniel breathed. Emma heard Agent Martinez's voice from the front room, calm and professional. Stand down. This is a federal safe house, a gunshot answered her. Martinez. Daniel started toward the front of the cabin, but Emma grabbed his arm. She's gone. We have to run. They crashed through the bedroom window together, rolling into the pine needles and morning mist. Behind them, the cabin erupted in shouts and the sounds of systematic searching. Emma and Daniel ran through the forest like animals, branches tearing at their clothes, pine needles slipping under their feet. Behind them, dogs barked, tracking dogs, closing the distance with every passing minute. There, Daniel pointed to a rocky outcropping ahead. We can hide in those caves until help arrives. But as they reached the rocks, a figure stepped out from behind a massive pine. Victor Henley looked nothing like his polished photograph. His expensive suit was rumpled, his silver hair disheveled, and his eyes held the desperate wildness of a man with nothing left to lose. He held a gun pointed directly at Emma's chest. Hello, Daniel. I must say, your taste in women has improved since Rebecca. Daniel stepped protectively in front of Emma. Let her go, Victor. This is between us. But it's not. You see, Miss Clark here represents a problem. Her testimony could send me to prison for the rest of my life. Henley's smile was cold. But her death would solve multiple problems. Remove the witness, destroy you emotionally, and give me the satisfaction of finishing what I started 2 years ago. You bastard. Rebecca never did anything to you. Rebecca was an obstacle to my rightful claim on Ashford Technologies. Just like this one is an obstacle to my freedom. Henley's finger tightened on the trigger. I built that company as much as you did, Daniel. I deserved to share in its success. So you had my wife murdered? Had a problem solved? If you'd been smart, you would have taken my buyout offer and walked away rich. Instead, you forced me to take more drastic measures. Emma felt Daniel's muscles coil, preparing to throw himself between her and the bullet. In that moment, she realized what love really meant. Not just the willingness to live for someone, but the willingness to die for them. But she also realized something else. Henley was focused entirely on Daniel, his rage and justification pouring out in a monologue that revealed his complete narcissism. He saw Emma as a problem to be eliminated, not a person capable of action. While Henley ranted, Emma slowly reached for the loose rock beside her foot. Artist's hands, trained in precision and timing. One chance. The beautiful irony, Henley continued, is that killing the daughter of the man who killed your wife gives this whole thing a poetic symmetry. Justice served cold. Emma launched the rock with all the force she could muster. It struck Henley's wrist just as he pulled the trigger, sending the shot wide. Daniel tackled him before he could aim again, and the two men went down in a tangle of fists and fury. Emma scrambled for the fallen gun, her hands shaking as she pointed it at the struggling men. "Stop. Both of you stop." Henley broke free from Daniel's grip, blood streaming from his nose. He looked at Emma with pure hatred. "You think you've won something? You think this changes anything? Your father was still a killer, and you're still the daughter of a killer." "Yes," Emma said quietly. "And I've learned something important from that legacy." Henley's expression flickered with uncertainty. "I've learned that we don't get to choose the darkness we inherit, but we do get to choose the light we create." Emma's voice grew stronger. "My father chose money over morality. You chose revenge over humanity. But I choose love over hate. I choose Daniel over the poison you've been spreading." In the distance, Emma could hear sirens. Real sirens this time, not Henley's mercenaries. Henley heard them too. His face crumpled with the realization that his elaborate revenge had failed, that he would spend the rest of his life in prison for murders that had gained him nothing. "It should have been mine," he whispered. "All of it should have been mine. The FBI agents found them like that TMA, holding the gun steady. Daniel bleeding but alive, and Victor Henley sitting in the pine needles, crying like a lost child who had destroyed everything he'd ever wanted." 6 months later, Emma stood in the same cemetery where she'd first spoken to Rebecca's grave. But this time, Daniel was beside her, their hands intertwined as they placed fresh flowers on the headstone. "Henley got life in prison," Daniel said quietly. "No possibility of parole. Good. Agent Martinez received a commendation for her work on the case. Even injured, she managed to call for backup before Henley's men found us." Emma nodded, but her attention was focused on the grave. "I still talk to her sometimes, Rebecca. I tell her about the children in my classes, about the paintings I'm working on, about how you smile now, really smile, not just the careful expression you used to wear." "What do you think she says back?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "I think she says thank you." "For what?" "For loving you enough to fight for you. For helping you remember that life can be beautiful again, even after tragedy." Daniel lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to Emma's palm. "The wedding is in 2 weeks." "I know. I'm terrified. Good terrified, or bad terrified?" Emma smiled. "The best kind of terrified. The kind that means something matters so much that losing it would break you." They walked back toward the parking lot together, leaving Rebecca's grave surrounded by white roses and baby's breath. Behind them, a gentle breeze stirred the flowers, as if someone was saying goodbye. At the car, Daniel paused. "Emma, do you ever wonder if we would have found each other without the tragedy? If Rebecca had lived? If your father hadn't made the choices he made?" Emma considered this. "I think we would have found each other eventually. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not with the same intensity, but love this deep doesn't happen by accident. It happens because two souls recognize something in each other that they can't find anywhere else. Even souls as damaged as ours, especially souls as damaged as ours." Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, the warmth of her presence. "I love you, Emma Clark. In this life, and whatever comes after. I love you too, Daniel Ashford. Forever and beyond forever." They drove away from the cemetery together, heading toward a future neither of them could have imagined when they first met in that hospital room 2 years ago. Behind them, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson colors that spoke of endings and beginnings, of love rising from ashes, of two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. In Emma's art studio that night, she put the finishing touches on her masterpiece of painting of two figures reaching across a chasm, their fingers finally, miraculously touching. The canvas glowed with light breaking through darkness, with hope triumphing over despair, with love proving stronger than loss. At the bottom, in small, precise letters, she wrote, "For Rebecca, who taught us that love doesn't end with death, it transforms." Daniel found her there at midnight, paint still wet on the canvas. tears of joy and grief and gratitude streaming down her face. "It's finished," she said, as Daniel agreed, wrapping her in his arms. "And so are we." The end.